Hello, this is Henry Silverman, and in this short presentation, I would like to discuss the ethics of mandatory human HPV vaccination and demonstrate a graphical analysis showing how weights are applied to ethical values. The issue for public policy is not which values should be respected, but rather how they should be weighed in relationship to each other. A framework that recognizes this balancing could facilitate a less emotional dialogue and focus debates on more clearly defined elements of disagreement. Such a framework can be conceptualized graphically and is described in this slide. The interest in autonomy is most compelling when an individual's behavior causes little or no harm to others. It declines as action threatens to cause injury. Hence, refusal of vaccination causes injury if it facilitates the spread of disease to others. In graphic form, this relationship can be represented by a downward sloping line on a graph in which respect for autonomy is measured on the y-axis and severity of harm from disease on the x-axis. In this representation, respect for autonomy declines as the risk of harm grows. The most compelling ethical consideration that competes with autonomy in evaluating an HPV vaccine mandate is utilitarianism, in particular, the interest in controlling disease spread. The interest in enhancing the common good can be represented with a line that slopes in the opposite direction as shown in this slide. Alternatively, another value that competes with autonomy is social justice, as shown in this slide. When the risk of harm from a disease is low, there is little need to have mandatory vaccination to enhance the common good or to achieve social justice. However, as the risk increases in terms of the severity of the disease, the interest in mandating vaccination increases. In this graphic scheme, the primary ethical value of autonomy that works against vaccine mandates and the primary value of the common good or social justice that works in the favor of vaccine mandates move along lines with opposite slopes. At some point, they cross. To the left of this point on the x-axis, the disease is mild enough or contained enough such that the interest in autonomy exceeds the imperative to intervene on behalf of the common good. To the right of this point where the two lines cross, the severity or contagiousness of the disease elevates the interest in the common good or social justice. The weight applied to autonomy could very well depend on one's political philosophy. As shown in this slide, people who are libertarian would place a greater weight on autonomy, and hence this slope would decrease. Or in other words, the line would move upwards. And here we see the point at which autonomy crosses with utilitarianism is further to the right, meaning that the interest in autonomy is outweighed only when the disease severity is greater. Instead of political philosophy, the interest in autonomy or the weight applied to autonomy would be refined by considering the kinds of population to which a mandate would apply. Three groups that warrant special consideration in this regard are children, healthcare workers, and members of the military in regards to vaccination in general. The interest of each in autonomy falls below that of the members of the general public, although their positions relative to one another may be somewhat less clear. The autonomy of children from the perspective of ethics and law is given less weight than that of adults because they are not considered to have the same decision-making capability. Healthcare workers, it can be argued, voluntarily accept certain medical risk in choosing their occupation and thereby consent to restrictions on their autonomy in this regard. Possible hazards of a vaccination that is required to prevent the spread of a disease to patients are among these risks. Members of the military sacrifice significant amounts of autonomy as an integral part of their service. Among the elements of autonomy that they lose is the freedom to avoid the risk of personal harm when ordered to face a threat. This slide shows the graphical analysis of the HPV mandate, and we see that the three major ethical values include parental autonomy, social justice, and utilitarianism. And the point at which we intervene depends on the weight that we apply to these ethical values. So, for example, if we consider social justice to have a higher weight than utilitarianism, then we see that when compared with parental autonomy, the point at which the lines of justice and parental autonomy crosses shows a decreased disease severity when compared to utilitarianism. Again, mainly because we've placed a greater weight on justice. However, one may place less of a weight on parental autonomy, as shown in this slide, resulting in the slope going downward to the left, in which case the point at which the line of parental autonomy intersects with justice or even utilitarianism is downward to the left, meaning that even with a lower disease severity, and hence for individuals who thought that HPV disease was less in magnitude compared to polio or other types of diseases, we see that if we put less of a weight on parental autonomy, we do not need that much of a disease severity to override parental autonomy. So I hope this short presentation shows that the issue is not which ethical values are in contention, because in the HPV debate, we all agree that the important ethical values are parental autonomy, justice, and utilitarianism. So hence, it isn't which ethical values are in contention, but however, the weight that we apply to these values remains to be the source of disagreement. Thank you very much.